right, welcome back to another edition of We Rise Fighting Labor podcast. We bring you today's labor news, history, and analysis from the U.S. and around the world. This is a podcast you listen to with your fellow workers organizing on the shop floor. This is a podcast you listen to before walking into your union meeting. As always, I'm Rico Rutia, here with my co-host, Brian Pfeiffer. What's up, everyone? As usual, we're going to kick things off today with a Labor for Palestine report, and then Brian is going to report on a couple of strikes that are taking place. One involving hotel workers with Unite Here, and the other one involving AT&T workers with the Communication Workers of America. I'm going to be reporting on a strike in Detroit involving Marathon Refinery workers. Also going to talk about unionized rideshare drivers in Nashville, and a potential strike by the International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA on the East Coast. That's a big one, so please stick around. There's all that and more, and in the meantime, I'm going to kick things off, as usual, with a little bit of music. Today, we're going to share Macklemore's Heinz Hall with you. Hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. The people, they won't leave. What is threatening about divesting and want a piece? The problem isn't the protests, it's what they're protesting. It goes against what our country is funding. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. Block the barricade until Palestine is free. When I was 7, I learned a lesson from Cuban Easy-E. What was it again? Oh yeah, fuck the police. Actors and badges protecting property in a system that was designed by white supremacy. But the people are in the streets. You could pay off Meta, you can't pay off me. Politicians who serve by any means. AT&amp, Kofi, and all the companies. You see, we sell fear around the land of the free. But this generation here is about to cut the strings. You could ban TikTok, take us out the algorithm, but it's too late. We've seen the truth, we bear witness. Seen the rubble, the buildings, the mothers, and the children, and all the men that you murdered. And then we see how you spin it. Who gets the right to defend and who gets the right of resistance. It's always been about dollars and the color of your pigment. But white supremacy is finally on blast, screaming free Palestine to their home at last. We see the lies and claiming it's anti-Semitic to be anti-Zionist. I seen Jewish brothers and sisters out there and riding in solidarity and screaming free Palestine, with them organizing and learning and finally cutting ties with the state that's gotta rely on apartheid system to uphold an occupying violent history. Been repeating for the last 75. The Nakba never ended, the colonizer lied. It's students' intents posted on the lawn. Occupying the quad is really against the law, and a reason to call in the police and their squad. Where does genocide land in your definition, huh? Destroying every college in Gaza and every mosque, pushing everyone into Rafah and dropping bombs. The blood is on your hands, Biden, we can see it all. And fuck no, I'm not voting for you in the fall. Undecided, you can't twist the truth, the people out here united. Never be defeated when freedom's on the horizon. Yet the music industry's quiet, complicit in their platform of silence. What happened to the artist? What you gotta say? If I was on a label, you could drop me today. I'll be fine with it, cause the heart fed my page. I want a ceasefire, fuck a response from Drake. What you willing to risk? What you willing to give? What if you were in Gaza? What if those were your kids? If the West was pretending that you didn't exist, you want the world to stand up, and the students finally did. Let's get it.
Hello, listeners. In our Labor for Palestine report, we're happy to report here at We Rise Fighting that Labor Day contingents took place in Madison, Milwaukee, Detroit, and across the U.S. Either delegations, contingents, and or speakers spoke at these events across the United States during Labor Day events on September 2nd. In Milwaukee, members of Labor for Palestine with their banners were tossed out of a Labor Fest event by security and police when Vice President candidate Tim Walz was speaking, but the members of Labor for Palestine did not stop with their demanding justice for Palestine. They had to speak out outside and continue their work for Palestine that day. And following that up yesterday with a speak out at the Milwaukee area Labor Council, and work on Palestine labor movement continues in Milwaukee and across the state of Wisconsin. In Madison, there was speakers at Labor Fest there, and demands for a ceasefire and an arms embargo were put forth by Jewish Voice for Peace, as well as Code Pink and other pro-Palestine activists. The vice president of the United Electrical Workers, Local 1186, also made the connection between her union and unions generally and justice for Palestine. And listeners might recall that we have talked about the UE's position on Palestine on many episodes, and they continue their steadfast support. And one of the leaders in the pro-Palestine movement in unions and many other members in social justice organizations across the United States. So solidarity with the UE and others who are fighting for Palestine and have this week at Labor Day events. In Detroit, we have a report from Abiyami Azakiwe, who's also been on We Rise Fighting and does a great amount of work in Detroit on various issues. In a new article, he quotes on Monday, he writes, on Monday, September 2nd, 2024, the Moratorium Now Coalition and several Palestine solidarity organizations converged at the Labor Day parade to appeal to organized labor to escalate their support for the struggle to liberate Palestine. Several unions have called for a ceasefire in Gaza, as well as an end to the funding of the Israeli military campaign against the people of Gaza. And listeners might recall that we have interviewed members of GEO, the Graduate Employee Organization in Ann Arbor, on Palestine and also their labor issues and making those connections. Abiyami Azakiwe continues in his article, Moratorium Now Coalition published and distributed a broadsheet entitled What Every Worker Should Know About Palestine, which gave some historical context for the intervention of labor unions into the movement to end the apartheid conditions under which millions of Palestinians are living. In the broadsheet, one article points to the 7 international unions which called upon United States President Joe Biden to end all military aid to Israel. Also, the publication reprinted the statement issued by the United Electrical Workers exposing the politically motivated governmental attacks on the UAW after it announced its position on Palestine last winter. Earlier that morning, Vice President Kamala Harris made a presidential campaign appearance at a nearby establishment where she met with union leaders. Palestine solidarity activists held a rally across the street on Trumbull at Michigan and Detroit, where they chanted slogans calling for the end, the unconditional support from the U.S. government to the occupying forces in Palestine. Azakiwe concludes the Palestine solidarity movement has continued to pressure the Democratic ticket to change its position on the situation inside the country and utilize its influence to further the struggle for the liberation of Palestine and the entire West Asia region. That concludes the article by Abiyami Azakiwe about Detroit on Labor Day. And we here at We Rise Fighting we are raising up as well. The next major national day of action for Palestine will happen October 5th. And this is entitled 1 Year Fighting Genocide, U.S.-Israel Genocide, and 1 Year of Resistance, as we've seen all over the country this past year, and we've been reporting here. Actions already are scheduled in multiple cities. So that's October 5th, National Day of Action. Wherever you may be, join a protest or start your own. More information will be forthcoming. There's information at Code Pink, Veterans for Peace, Al-Ada, Answer Coalition, and many others are participating in this very important action in the Palestinian youth movement, and many others as well. All right, Rick, back to you.
All right, what's up, everyone? First article that I have on my plate here is coming from NewJersey.com, and the headline reads as follows: The holiday shopping season is near. How a union strike threat could impact New Jersey gift giving. So I already, I can't resist. Before I get into it, I can't resist. I mean, this part of what we've talked about on the show is just like how strikes are just presented by the corporate media as this inconvenience. And I think, it's part of our task to overcome that or change that or build community alliances so that we can't get labeled as an inconvenience, But anyway, let's go right ahead into the article. Again, this one's coming from NewJersey.com. The article reads as follows. The International Longshoremen's Association has threatened to strike if a new contract with East Coast Port Terminal and shipping companies is not ironed out by the time the old contract expires on October 1st. So just a little less than a month from now. That would effectively shut down some of the busiest ports in the country, including the ports of New York and New Jersey, potentially disrupting the delivery of billions of dollars worth of consumer goods during peak shipping season. And again, this is what we're on here to talk about. Potentially disrupting the delivery of billions of dollars worth of consumer goods. Okay, these are the moments where the capitalist media tells us how much our labor is worth and how much a disruption would be worth. So let's not misread these numbers when they tell us that a strike would cost billions of dollars. That's speaking to the worker power. So here, let's carry on with this article though. Leaders of the ILA, that's the International Longshoremen's Association, based in North Bergen, that's New Jersey, are looking for a significant pay hike for their members, saying they deserve a share of the profits that shipping and port terminal companies have made as cargo volume remains high after the demand caused during the COVID-19 pandemic. And here's a quote. Quote, the ILA proposal not only makes up for the past few years of extremely high inflation and long-term inflation going back decades when a $1 per hour increase was a fair raise, but the proposal also ensures the financial security of ILA members and their families through the uncertainty of the coming years. And that's unquote, ILA President Harold J. Daggett told the 250 ILA delegates who met Wednesday in Teaneck to discuss the contract talks. The delegates were set to meet again Thursday to discuss strike mobilization plans. The union cut off contract talks in June after learning that a form of automation had been introduced at the port of Mobile, Alabama, which they said violated the existing contract. The port had started using an auto gate system that autonomously processes truck with ILA labor, the union said. I wanted to stop there for a second too. I'm just going to read a couple of more lines from this article, but I wanted to stop there too and make this following point because we're here to discuss labor theory and labor analysis, right? And when the conversation revolves around automation, I think it's a conversation that we should all pay careful attention to because, like automation by itself, and Brian, feel free to chime in here, but automation by itself, as I see it, isn't a bad thing. I think what makes it a bad thing is the social relations that exist in the workplace and the social relations that exist under capitalism. Under capitalism, when you automate something, it's so as to decrease the cost of your labor. So you can lay off workers and just rely on robots, right? In another system that wouldn't be profit driven, you could have automation and take more leisure time because you have a robot doing it. So I just wanted to say that and kind of put that out there, for folks to think about because this is a labor show and we also discuss theory and we discuss analysis. So just putting that out there. Now let's go on a couple of more sentences because it touches on some of the stuff that I wanted to touch on here. Terminal operators and shipping lines are represented by the U.S. Maritime Alliance, or USMX, which is based in Lyndhurst. According to the organization, the contract in question covers approximately 25,000 workers employed in container operations at ports on the U.S. East and Gulf coasts. Okay, so that's what I wanted to talk about. It's 25,000 workers. It's 25,000 workers, and their labor, if they withhold their labor, would cost billions of dollars in consumer trade, consumer spending, consumer delivery, stuff like that. And this article is telling us that. So what I'm learning here is that, the capitalist class or the USMX, the US Maritime Alliance, the USMX is aware of this. And so that being the case, they have to be aware that giving pay raises to 25,000 workers is going to be substantially less than having to bear the cost of billions of dollars worth of disruption created by a worker strike. This is a point that we've made on this show repeatedly, but continue to make because these are important points and we seem to have more labor activity. Now, let's finish up this article with this one paragraph. In its most recent statement on the contract talks issued August 30th, the USMX said that, quote, it still has been unable to secure a meeting with the ILA to resume negotiations on a new master contract. USMX continues to meet with its members in preparation for the resumption of negotiations, and it remains committed to working with the ILA leadership on a new agreement, unquote. And so, part of what I did for today was go ahead and look into a couple of things because I wasn't sure who the USMX was. And, it turns out just like in other industries, it's an association, it's an alliance, it's a union, if you will, of the bosses. Okay, so the USMX is an association of the maritime companies, and it's a total of about 40 companies. And also, last week I did a presentation here on this show on how to look up campaign contributions. And so I went ahead and did that with the ILA just to kind of bring that point home. And if anyone who listened to the show last week would like to look at, fact check my stuff, I encourage it at this point. That would actually excite me. But what I found was this, that for 2023 and 2024, the ILA gave a significant amount of political campaign contributions to candidates on the East Coast. Okay, so what I'm seeing, and this is right in front of my eyes right now, is that they gave money to candidates in DC. So this would be Frederica Wilson. In Indiana, it would be Mervyn for Congress. In Maryland, it would be Irish American Democrats. In Texas, it would be Keep Al Green in Congress. In New Jersey, it would be Donald Payne Jr. for Congress. In Washington, Friends of Maria. And these are all $5,000 contributions, every single one that I've read so far. And there are many more. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is one, because hopefully folks can look this up for themselves and, kind of put this research to use, but also to ask the question, what are we getting in return? What is the ILA getting in return now that we're less than a month away from the strike? All right. Is this going to be another repeat of the railway strike? Are all these Democrats and people that the ILA has given very generous campaign contributions to, are all these people going to turn around and shut down this strike? Like, are they going to interfere? I'm wondering, what the payout is for all these very significant contributions that the ILA has made. Just gonna put that out there for folks to think about, maybe look up if you'd like to, but also, just to, just for mostly for people to think about right now, see how this is going to go down, and we will keep you updated on the state of this strike in shows to come. So, that's what I have on the ILA strike right now. Back to you, Brian.
All right, thanks, Rick. We'd also, before we get in our next section on the Unite Here strike, we'd like to thank our friends at Louisiana Worker, that's Louisiana Worker, who sent us a couple issues of their latest newspaper. This is very similar to We Rise Fighting. They're an independent workers organization that fights racism and has an internationalist perspective. So check that out, Louisiana Worker, and we'll have more information, potentially maybe an interview coming up with them. They do great work down in Louisiana, organizing the South. All right, we're happy to report here that our friends, fellow workers at Unite Here Union, representing workers in a variety of industries, mostly in hotels, struck on September 2nd, Labor Day, 10,000 workers nationwide. And there's information at unitehere.org. That's unitehere.org. And at the Facebook page, Unite Here, and also their social media. They put out a press release, the union, Unite Here, that briefly says Labor Day saw 10,000 workers on strike after hotel workers walked off the job at 25 hotels in 9 cities: Baltimore, Boston, Greenwich, Honolulu, Kauai, San Diego, San Francisco, San Jose, and Seattle. After months of unresolved negotiations, the limited duration strikes lasted 1 to 3 days in each city. Strikes have also been authorized and could begin at any time in Baltimore, New Haven, Oakland, and Providence. And some of that's a bit dated, listeners. So for most up-to-date information, check out again the unitehere.org website and Facebook page as well, Unite Here. And the workers are striking over wages, workloads, and COVID era cuts at these 25 hotels. And we are asking listeners and your friends and fellow workers in particular and family members, don't eat, sleep, or meet at any hotel that is on strike or where workers have been on strike until they secure a new contract. So again, don't eat, sleep, or meet at any hotel that is on strike or where workers have been on strike until they secure a contract. The workers really appreciate fellow union members and workers generally if you join their picket lines and spread the word about what's going on to get those picket lines set up. The hotel owners are filthy rich because they have exploited workers for too long. And we here, of course, at We Rise Fighting support these strikes and wish our fellow workers well. All right, Rick.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Don't cross a picket line, man. Don't cross a picket line, people. Come on, basic lessons here in labor solidarity. Don't cross a picket line. Not going to get into it, but there are people who, right before jumping on this recording, were kind of disappointing and breaking my heart and Brian's heart as far as who has crossed picket lines. Famous celebrities, unfortunately, do that. But yeah, no, lesson number one, if you're working class, you do not cross a picket line. Hello. All right, next story up here. Next story is coming from clickondetroit.com. The headline reads as follows: Why police were forced to intervene at Marathon Refinery strike in Detroit. And it kicks off by saying that the strike began on Wednesday, and it reads as follows: More than 200 members of Teamsters Local 283 walked out on Wednesday morning, September 4th, as contract talks continue without a deal. Members of the union voted 95% to authorize the strike, so workers began picketing outside the Detroit refinery around 5 a.m. Wednesday. The union and Marathon have been negotiating a contract since December. Picketers said the strike will continue 24/7 until an agreement is reached. Marathon officials say they didn't expect operations at the plant to be affected by the strike. Like to highlight that they didn't expect operations to be affected by the strike. I think that's important. You know, just as important when they tell us that a strike is going to cost billions of dollars, I think it's important to take note when they say that they don't expect the operations to be affected. Article continues. Police intervened on Thursday. Local 4 cameras were rolling Thursday morning when picketers blocked petroleum trucks from entering the refinery. Police officers were called to the scene and they blocked the protesters from the roadway, allowing the trucks to get through. The interaction was peaceful and picketers complied with police. As of 10:17 a.m. Thursday, picketers are still walking in the roadway and blocking some petroleum trucks. Detroit police officers are still at the scene. Once several trucks became backed up at the entrance, officers have been blocking picketers to make room for trucks to get by, and the process repeats. Okay, so this is a story, this is a theme that has come up here on this show several times. Basically, the role of the police in strikes, the role of police during strikes, whose side are they going to show up on? And I'm just going to challenge listeners, I'm going to challenge union members and say, can you remember one time when the police showed up to arrest the CEO of a corporation? Can you remember one time when the police showed up to arrest the shareholders of a corporation for not paying their workers a living wage? No, that sort of thing doesn't happen. The police always show up on the side of the bosses. And, this isn't anything strange. This isn't anything new. The police are descendants of slave patrols. As this country evolved, it began with slave patrols during the era of slavery. And then, as the country started becoming more industrialized, the threat then was industrial strikes, which were curbed by the Pinkerton investigative forces. And from that evolved the police. And that's what we have right now. So, of course, they're going to show up on the side of the bosses. So this article, talks about like how they were forced to intervene. The police were forced to intervene at Marathon Refinery, but that's their expected role. That's how you keep the system together, you know? So yeah, and it's important to keep the system together at the strike level too, because strikes offer so many lessons and bring up so many questions. Questions of what is just, what is a just workplace, what is a just salary, what is just healthcare, all the way up to questions of what is ownership and how come the bosses keep the profits when the workers create all the profits and all the revenues and keep operations going and keep everything going, not just in at one particular workplace, but in all of society. So, yeah, just wanted to report from Detroit a little bit. Hats off to the Teamster members. We will continue to cover this one as long as we find news on it. But for now, back to you, Brian.
All right, Rick. Like what you said there, I've never in my life ever seen a police officer arrest any CEO or corporation or any of their servants in the right-wing legislatures across the country who are directly killing and murdering and maiming and taking all kinds of things from the people. They
That's
are not being arrested by the police.
And that's exactly it, right? Like when some of these people go on strike, man, they're laying it all on the line. Like straight up, they are laying it all on the line. And these CEOs and these shareholders and, these upper level managers, they have the authority to cut off stuff like health insurance, and I mean, you do that. You do that. And yeah, you're fucking with people's lives. You're putting people's lives in danger, if not killing people altogether. It's a very real thing. Do cops show up for them? No.
No, that's right. Speak the truth. All right, and here we go with 17,000 AT&T workers have been on strike now for over 3 weeks. About 17,000 AT&T workers in the Southeast are still on strike after the CWA, the Communication Workers of America union, withdrew from negotiations over a new contract. Internet service technicians, customer service representatives, and thousands of other workers in 9 states, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. CWA Local 3204 in Atlanta is on strike, and president members are on strike. And Atlanta President Ed Barlow says the lack of bargaining is the direct cause of the strike. If the company doesn't want to send the right representative to the table, our members are prepared to stay out and strike as long as we have to get the company to do the right thing at the bargaining table, Barlow said. Supporters can contribute to the strike fund. See the CWA District 9 website. And as we encourage all of listeners here, one of the most important things, of course, is to contribute to the strike fund, but also share photos and videos of the strikers. Once it's very important that workers see that they have the support, but it also helps build optimism and solidarity and relationships between and among workers in all sectors, all industries, and get hope from each other that we can strike and we can get what we need. We build everything, we deserve everything. So when our fellow workers are on strike, we're there for them, and we support their picket lines, and we do what we can to raise funds for the strike fund. And if we're in tough economic challenges ourselves, as Rick and I saw at the UAW Local 180 strike back in December of 2022, it was very touching, where folks were walking in the Union Hall with cans of vegetables and winter gear. There's a lot of things that can be done to help members on strike. So our creativity of our class, the working class, knows no bounds. So we will do everything we can to help our fellow workers here at the CWA and all of the things we've talked about here on the show tonight succeed. All right, Rick, back to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we could do to help workers on strike, including taking political contributions away from Kamala Harris and putting them in the strike fund. Just an idea. Just an idea. Anyway, moving right along. This is going to be the final article from me. This one is coming out from truthout.org, and the headline reads as follows. Unionized rideshare drivers vow future strikes after jamming Nashville airport. And I wanted to report on this one for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's inspiring, and I will get to the second part as I read through this. So it reads as follows. Summer is winding down, but the Tennessee Drivers Union is still getting started. Following a vote to unionize in late August just late August, of last year, I'm presuming, now that I think about it, or actually, I'm not sure. A coalition of rideshare drivers kicked off Labor Day weekend by staging a strike at the Nashville International Airport. Around 100 Uber and Lyft drivers filled up the airport rideshare lot but refused to accept rides, aiming to deal a blow to Nashville's $30 billion tourism industry on a holiday weekend. The Tennessee Drivers Union, which represents drivers from more than 14 countries, says it's the largest strike of its kind to occur in the Deep South and has vowed to continue staging periodic strikes until its demands are met. The latest effort in Tennessee highlights the ongoing struggles of rideshare drivers and other gig workers who have spent years fighting for fair pay and amid intense corporate pushback. The Tennessee Drivers Union says Uber and Lyft take between 60% and 80% of the rideshare drivers' earnings, forcing many to work 12-hour days to make ends meet, even as Uber shares hit record highs this year. Similarly, a 2023 report from the US UCLA Labor Center found that while passenger costs have been increasing, Uber and Lyft are taking a larger percentage of driver earnings than before. The Tennessee drivers' labor action tactically mirrors the nationwide strikes that occurred this past February when Lyft, Uber, and DoorDash drivers mounted strikes in 44 cities, including 10 major airports, to push for higher wages and better protections. So there's more to the article, but I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to leave it there because I just wanted to take a couple of points from this article. The first one being that this is only 100 drivers that were able to pull this off and deal some kind of blow to the economy in Nashville, especially on a holiday weekend. So I wanted to take all of that and just say, it was only 100 drivers, but it was a holiday weekend. So, I think that the impacts are immeasurable, really, but nevertheless, if you're going to do something, it's a good idea to do it strategically at a time like that. Okay, so that's one point that I wanted to make from this article. The second point is a lesson that I also learned recently, I think in the last handful of years. On here we talk labor analysis, we talk labor theory. And oftentimes that has us talking about the working class and the capitalist class and owners. And usually when we think about owners, we think of people like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Henry Ford or shareholders, people like that. But what I wanted to take from this article is that these days, the owners of apps are also people that we have to keep an eye on, and people who are making a fortune off of our labor, as we can clearly see in this article. So I just wanted to highlight that and have people recognize that and see that, think about that, whatever your deal is. But that's what's going on here. That's who these workers, these drivers are up against, is the owners of these apps. So that's what we have this week for labor news and news from Palestine. As always, thank you everyone for listening. Please go ahead and subscribe, share, like, whatever it is you do. We try to keep a fairly regular schedule, but don't always manage to nail it. So we do encourage you to subscribe if you're a fan, if you like to listen in on this labor news and analysis and theory, all that. So thank you again. Go ahead and subscribe. Solidarity and love to all. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.